In any case, when the jury is filing back into the courtroom and you have no idea what the verdict is going to be, your heart is pounding out of your chest. I am, hanging on every word. I no longer can look at the jury when they're back in the courtroom. And earlier in my career, I'd watch them file in. I'd try and glean something from whether they looked at me or not. What's the verdict going to be? I've resigned myself to the fact that I'm completely out of control at that point, and I'm just bracing myself for what could come. So, with this case, there were three charges, the second of which was complicated with several lesser included charges. And I felt like I was, on the ocean in high seas, just trying not to fall overboard as they're announcing the verdict. And it was within that, I don't know, maybe it took 30 seconds, but within that 30-second span of time, I just had a range of emotion, and, it was just overwhelming for me. The trial happened twice, but in my view, she was overcharged twice. I was there right at her arraignment in Stoughton District Court on February 2nd of 2022, and I was surprised that they had charged her with manslaughter in the first place. In my view, reading the police report at that time, it was a motor vehicle homicide. I could only surmise it was because of the identity of the victim, John O'Keefe being a Boston police officer. I think the case was treated differently because of who the victim was. I also think it was treated differently because of whose home outside of which he was found. But then, they then took the case to the grand jury, and it wasn't enough to, in my view, overcharge her with manslaughter, but they then overcharged her with second-degree murder, which I just thought was crazy. When that happened, I thought to myself, well, they must have some new evidence that they haven't produced yet. But then, you read the grand jury minutes and the discovery that they relied on. It was the same evidence, essentially, that was introduced, or that was, produced, I should say, at the start. My personal belief is, if he wasn't a Boston police officer, I think this case stays in Stoughton District Court and is tried as a motor vehicle homicide there. I don't think she would have been indicted for this, but for the fact that he was a Boston police officer. That's just my personal view.